Hello and welcome to Football League World TV. My name is Ned Holmes and this is the Under the Microscope show. Today we're previewing the Championship clash between West Brom and Nottingham Forest at the Hawthorns this evening. In the blue and white corner, we've got Matt from WBA Report. How are you doing today, Matt?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Just looking forward to the game.
Absolutely. And giving the Forest perspective today, we've got Des from Do Daily. How are you doing, Des?
I'm good, thank you. Again, I was just saying I'm looking forward to doing this and then making my way down for the game. So really exciting.
Absolutely. It promises to be an enthralling one, if nothing else. But before we get started, just a reminder to subscribe to Football League World TV on YouTube. Give this video a like and, of course, get involved via the comments because we want to hear what you've got to say. And we're going to start by looking at the two teams' recent form. Coming to you first then, Matt, the home side, we were talking a bit before we went on air. Still third in the league, so sort of hard to complain too much when you look at the rest of the Championship, but patchy form for Albion of late. 1 win in 5, I think it is now, and sort of losing ground, as it were, on the top two. What do you put that sort of the recent drop-off in form down to?
Well, I think you look at the first 10 sort of games of the season. We had a decent unbeaten spell. I suppose you can class that as the honeymoon period under Valérien Ismaël, and everything seemed rosy then. But I believe that the deficiencies within this squad, lack of depth, the weaker areas have now come to the fore, and we're seeing that this squad perhaps isn't as complete as perhaps other supporters and Albion fans may have actually first thought. I think this side desperately lack a striker, an out-and-out number 9, because Jordan Hugo hasn't lived up to the to I guess perhaps hopes. But then again, what were we meant to expect from a somewhat average Championship striker? And then you can look at Ismail's tactics and the style of players come under criticism in recent times. Everyone will have their opinions on that, whether it's trying to get the best out of a limited squad or are we capable of playing better football, keeping the ball on the ground and passing through teams. I'd say it's a combination probably between the squad and the manager's tactics.
Absolutely. And moving on to the manager then, that there's obviously been a little bit of unrest amongst fans building, given not just the results, but his style of play. When you're not winning, you don't have that momentum, can make a difficult watch. What would you say the feeling is amongst Baggies fans on Ismaël right now, and how do you feel about him personally?
From fan base's perspective as a whole, I'd say there's a bit of I guess what would the word be? They're not enjoying it right now. Yeah. There are a fair amount of fans that think we could be playing better football, i.e. keeping the ball on the ground, passing it about more. A lot of complaints about his lack of flexibility as a manager. So sticking to the one formation, the 3-4-3, when there's games where we've perhaps been outdone in midfield, could do with an extra body in there, and even sticking with 3 defenders. We're a team that, on paper at least, should be going out and looking to attack teams. So, that's been frustrating fans too. From my perspective, again, I think I look at it and think this football can be effective, and it was enjoyable at the start of the season. We were going at teams, the really high press and maintaining that intensity for, I guess you'd say, 90 minutes. But the style has dropped off, and it's not as enjoyable as those first 10 games were. But I'm always keen to give the manager a chance to turn it around. I think it's only 3 months into the season, and we've gone from one style of football under Sam Allardyce, to Valérien Ismaël's 90-mile-an-hour pressing football. So I'm some more understanding, I guess, than perhaps other Albion fans. And of course, we lost our best player in the summer, and that was a massive blow. So I want to give Ismail time to turn it around and to perhaps mould a squad of his own. And so he's on a 4-year deal, so I'm certainly keeping the faith just now.
Absolutely, and coming to you then, Des. Obviously, Forest. I guess perhaps at the back of a sort of the Cooper honeymoon period themselves. After that Fulham defeat, 4 draws in 5 league games, a win over Preston. What are your thoughts on sort of the current run that Forest are on?
I think we're still optimistic. That he come in and we won sort of 4 or 5 games out of 6. And it was really, really different from what we had. He changed the game from a defensive setup to a more attacking sort of high press, like Matt was talking about with West Brom. And we had some real. It felt like we had the quality players in the team. I think what's happened more recently with Forest is, whilst we're still sort of enjoying what's happening, we're really competitive in games. That's what he made us. First of all, he made us competitive, and that gave us a platform to go on and some of the players like Brennan Johnson and Lewis Grabban to do their thing. I think what's happened in the last 3 or 4 games is we're just missing 1 or 2 players, 1 or 2 suspensions. And I think with Forest, the first 11 we can put out under what seems like Cooper's preferred formation, which is sort of 3-5-1-1, that kind of thing. We seem to be really competitive when he's got those 11 players he wants in situ. When we're digging into some of these reserve players and the suspensions and injuries are taking telling, and we're having to move players around because almost feel sort of round holes with square pegs.
Yeah.
We're still really, really competitive, but we're just lacking that cutting edge that was getting us through games, winning us games. There's many games where we've gone into and we've looked really good, but gone 1-0 down. And in other games, we've not looked so good and gone 1-0 up. And we're getting a lot of draws at the moment. So I just think we're missing the opportunity to pick the first 11 outright, and play that formation I mentioned. He's reverted to sort of a 4-4-1-1 type formation, which I don't believe works particularly well. We tend to go long. The press seems to be difficult. It's hard for us to move the ball from the defence to the front. With a 3-5-2, you've almost got a spare man at the back, and a sweeper type thing going on. So there's always somebody able to sort of play the ball to the more creative players. I think more recently we've had to go a bit more direct, purely because of who is available, and it's not quite working. It's not bad, don't get me wrong. I'm still really, really optimistic. And when these players are available again and come back, I think we'll be really competitive in this league. And I've got big hopes for the rest of the season.
Absolutely. So positivity, certainly from the Forest side, and if not positivity, then the understanding of patience from Albion. Staying with you, Des, and looking at your opponents this evening, what have you made of Albion this season?
In all honesty, I've not seen a great deal. One of the games I did see was the Stoke game where they lost 1-0, and they didn't seem to offer too much. Looking at the results, as I have done in preparation for this, it seems like Albion are quite good at home, and I know Matt's trying to be positive, but I can't see too many negatives. Of course, the last 3 results haven't gone. But if you look at the home form before that, I'm expecting a really tough game. They seem to pick teams off. The away forms become a little bit inconsistent. And, of course, the last 3 games against what appears like lesser opposition, they've struggled. So, but Albion away for Forest is a really tough game. We're confident going into it. Like I said before, I feel like every game we've been competitive. Under the previous manager, we would have gone into a game like this thinking, oh, God, if we're 1-0 down within 10 minutes, it's game over. Whereas if we do go 1-0 down now, we've got a bit of fight about us. And ultimately from today, I'm looking at us going into it thinking there's a chance, Albion aren't on top form. If we click, I think we're a match for anybody. We did get a bit of a stuffing from Fulham, which a lot of teams have got this year, which is the only defeat under Cooper. But even in that game, I don't think we was outclassed or outplayed. Everyone's saying Fulham are a different level. I don't necessarily believe that. I just think, sort of going back to Albion, whilst they appear to be up there, I think they're just kind of in a group between sort of 3rd and 12th, where any of them could get in the playoffs. And thankfully, we've just crept into that group. So I think we've got nothing to fear, but it's an intimidating place to go, and it could be a tough night. But for me, let's go into it and see what happens.
Absolutely, and coming to you then, Matt, for sort of your thoughts on Forest. Obviously, there were certainly better times in the season to play Forest. That early run sort of under Houghton, but equally there were probably worse times to play than the early Cooper times. So, what have you made of sort of Forest so far this season?
It's fairly sort of black and white, isn't it? With the change of manager, I was shocked that Chris Hughton couldn't get a tune out the squad. I mean, an experienced manager who has succeeded at this level in the past with the likes of Newcastle, Birmingham, and of course Brighton. And that was a shock because I do think they've got quality in their squad. Lewis Grabban's a more than proven Championship striker. I really like the look of Brennan Johnson. I think he was brilliant at Lincoln last year and has performed well this season. Again, the likes of Joe Worrell, Scott McKenna, solid defenders. So I think all in all, it's a very decent squad. And now we're seeing Steve Cooper make the most of that. I think it'll be a tough game. By all means, I definitely don't think we'll have it easy. I can't see us, running rampant against Forest tonight. With the form really since Cooper's come in, our patchy form as Des alluded to there. So I definitely think it'll be a tough game. Always tends to be against Forest. They'll sell out the away end and make it a hostile atmosphere. So by all means, it's not meant to be easy. You'd like to think Albion, we've got, I think you'd still say a top 3 squad. We need to be taking the game to any team in this division. If we want to secure automatic promotion, that has to be a necessity. Every game we need to go out and attack the opponent. But it's just that recent form. It hasn't been very inspiring from an Albion perspective recently, so I can't see us running rampant against Forest, and I'm quite pessimistic for tonight.
Fair enough. So before we move on to sort of some more specific topics on the game itself, just a reminder, get your comments, your questions in. We've had quite a lot of Forest love in the comments already. Talk Forest TV saying Forest to win, you Reds. So remember, send in your Forest, your comments, your questions for me, Des or Matt. Looking specifically, toward tonight's game, then Matt, is there an area of that Forest side or an area of the game itself which you think is going to be vital, or you think you think Albion can exploit to sort of get a result?
I look at where Albion's strengths and weaknesses lie, and I look at Forest, and I think that, again, alluded to previously, the one stark difference between the two teams when looking at the squads is striker. Lewis Grabban, even Lyle Taylor's coming off the bench. I think, from a personal point of view, I'd rather have either of those two strikers as opposed to Jordan Hugill leading the line. And you could argue that in the absence of a striker from us, the game may depend on how efficient Carlin Grant is in front of goal. At Blackpool on Tuesday the other night, he had a couple of chances, and given his decent form recently, you'd expect him to bury one of those. So if Grant gets a chance and takes it, then he's our main source of goals. If he doesn't, who can you see scoring? Callum Robertson perhaps has been in and out of the team. Matt Phillips, Grady Diangana, they aren't natural goal scorers. So then you go into set pieces or an Alex Mowat wonder strike. So I really think that could be sort of the area which decides this game, if Albion are efficient in front of goal and who will get those goals. Whereas Forest have got goals from, as I said, Lewis Grabban, Johnson can chip in, and a number of the attackers, Zinkenagel, Joe Lolly, they're all capable players. So I think in front of goal might decide it tonight.
Fair enough. And coming to you, Des, sort of same question: is there an area of the pitch you think the game's going to be decided in tonight, or is there a way that you'd like to see Forest sort of look to exploit West Brom?
I'd like to see us play, definitely sort of attack them, go on the front foot. That's what Forest need to do. The players that worry me for West Brom are actually Grant, who seems to do well at home, and Matt Phillips. He seems to be the curse of Forest. Just thinking of games against you in the past, he seemed to always score. Even in games we've really dominated. I remember one at the start of the season once we'd absolutely battered West Brom, and he popped up with a goal. So that worries me, and particularly with the way Forest might line up, we're really lacking in the full-back, wing-back positions. So if Phillips plays out wide, it could be a way for Albion to sort of break us down and then sort of use Grant as well, like Matt said, to finish them off. Those two players stick out. Obviously there's been a lot of changes. In terms of Forest, like I said, like it's the play off the front foot. When we play off the front foot, the defence, Joe Worrell seems to get the defence organised. They seem to sort of they're really good at concentrating almost when it's not wave on wave.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. Lots of teams would perhaps rather teams come at them and they can defend and dig in. But I think Forest can really, when they set up and they've got a chance to get into the game, the front men are doing their thing. We rely heavily on Brennan Johnson, to be honest. He's a brilliant player. He's going to be he'll leave Forest eventually for a bigger move in a big club. But tonight, I think he's just gone a little bit quiet in the last couple of games. Again, I think it's due to personnel in the team. We'd love to see Joe Lolly sort of crack one in the top corner, because we know when he does, there's kind of a stat going around at the moment that he's not scored for like 50-odd games, like 50-odd shots or something like that. But we know when he scores one, he might score 2 or 3 in quick succession. Yeah. So those are the players, Zinkenagel, that when they're busy, when they're on it, when we're on the front foot, when we're in the opposition's half, we can really give anybody a game. And that's what I kind of alluded to that before. I think what Forest have got to do is really take the game to them, get on the front foot, and I think we can exploit some of the uncertainties that West Brom are carrying. If you look at recent games, both sides in recent games haven't scored too many goals. So I expect it to be really tight. And it's one of those where I feel if Forest can survive the first 10 minutes, like when many teams come to the City ground, the home fans might start getting impatient, and the defence might start getting worried. We've got those players who can just do something out of nothing. Brennan Johnson, I've mentioned him already. He'll do a back heel, flick it between someone's legs. Get down to the byline. On all the Forest channels I talk on, Brennan Johnson getting to the byline is so important. You never see a player like that these days. Normally wingers play on the opposite side and cut in. When he's playing on the right side for me, he makes things happen. So if we play him down the left-hand side and he attacks the right fullback, I think we'll get a lot of success, and that could be where we win it.
Brilliant. And there's an area of the game I think looks really interesting heading into for both sides, really, and that's sort of holding midfield, central midfield area. Obviously, Jack Colback suspended Des. James Garner and Brian Ajada, they seem to play pretty well in midweek, but quite an inexperienced duo there. Would you like to see those two start again, or how would you like to see that Forest midfield two sort of made up?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting point that, of course, since Cooper come in, Jack Colback's been integral in what we've done. He's come back into the team. He split the fan base at Forest before, but now everyone's on side again. I was a massive fan because I thought when he's in the team, we've got that extra bit of steel, extra bit sort of cover in front of the defence, and somebody who's experienced enough to sort of hold on to the ball, look round. It was a bit like a hot potato before he came in. James Garner lost form, and he was kind of spraying it out like he used to, but it wasn't working. So with him not playing, that's massive. I think that's a massive plus for West Brom. But in terms of those two guys you mentioned, they had good games against Luton, and of course we had to play 20 minutes with 10 men. Jay would come in. The first time we'd seen him, we'd all been told he's a good player. He seemed to get his foot on the ball, and just after half time, before we had the man sent off, when it looked like when it's the time the home team should be in the ascendancy going looking for that goal, he was getting the ball and driving through the midfield. So I'd definitely like to see him sort of line up, whether Ryan Yates plays or not is another thing. But Ryan Yates, again, he's been absolutely brilliant, almost like that enforcer, in there. And I think back to West Brom, I'm not even quite sure who plays regular in those positions, but they've always had those creative midfielders in the past, which is probably lacking a bit now. And I think if we get it right in there tonight, if we stamp our authority again, playing off the front foot, we can really take hold of that. And that's, again, a really important part of the pitch where we could dominate and ultimately go on to win the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ryan Yates as an enforcer against what is a really physical West Brom side could be something we see. Matt, coming to you, same sort of area of the pitch, really. It's been a really interesting one this season. Obviously, Alex Mowat and Jake Livermore, they were in the middle to start with. They sort of seem to form a great sort of duo. But in recent weeks, we've seen some changes. Jason Malumbi and Mowat seem to give a bit more dynamism, a bit more energy, and then you've got the likes of Snodgrass who can be that creative sort of asset. It was Malumbi and Mowat in midweek. Who would you like to see tonight?
Yeah, I'd very much like to see that combination continue. I think they played fairly well on Tuesday night, got the ball down, and we did create chances, just couldn't take them. Yeah. I'm not a massive Livermore fan personally, and I think you'd find a lot of the Albion fans saying a similar sort of thing. Yeah, he's the captain. I'm sure he's a vital part in that dressing room and can add quality on the pitch. But for me, having that extra sort of dynamism is vital, and I think in their own right, Mowat and Malumbi are good players. As you said, we've seen bits of Snodgrass, but interestingly, he was left out the last two match day squads, and recent comments from Valérien Ismaël didn't exactly give an answer as to why. So that's something to keep an eye on. Have they fallen out? Yeah. Possibly. Yeah, very much. It has to be Malumbi and Mowat for me. Mowat's pretty much been a class act this season. Consistently, one of the best players. You're going to get a 7 out of 10 from him. And what I've seen from Malumbi, he says seems very dynamic, quick, has got quality, can get the ball down, vital in this Ismaël system, non-stop running. So I think that's definitely the partnership we'll go with tonight. If not, you're looking into the depths of youth players. So Malumbi and Mowat for me.
Absolutely, and as you touched on before, given the lack of a sort of consistent number 9, those goals from Alex Mowat, that goal threat he offers could be vital. And talking of Alex Mowat, we're going to move on to a couple of danger men next. We touched upon them briefly. Well, a few players, really, Matt, from Forest perspective. But is there one that particularly stands out as a danger man, someone you're really worried about?
I think most people might go with Grabban, because his efficiency in front of goal has been there for quite a few years now. But for me, it has to be Brennan Johnson. Again, I've got to go back to watching him at Lincoln. I mean, I'm good mates with Morgan Rogers now at Bournemouth, and obviously watched a lot of their games. And in all honesty, Johnson stood out massively for me. He seems so dynamic, so inventive going forward. He's got pace, he's got technical quality. No wonder there are rumours of Brentford putting in offers and whatnot. So I'm really aware of the threat he provides. Perhaps Albion or the rest of our fans may not be. So he's really the man we have to stop tonight, in my opinion. If we can stop those create those chances at source, which would be Johnson, in my opinion, then perhaps Grabban wouldn't be as much of a threat to worry about. Very much it's Brennan Johnson for me.
And what about you, Des? Is there an Albion player that you're particularly worried about?
Yeah, I mentioned there Phillips. He always seems to bring his A game. When he plays Forest, he's always been a dangerous player. He's always been a really good player. And he chips in with goals, and of course what I said about a lack of sort of wing backs and full backs at the moment. People potentially playing out of position. They could get to us that way. An interesting one, and I know Matt's not too keen, but Livermore, he always seems to have an impact on this game. Whether it's a sending off or a big foul where he didn't get sent off, or a goal. He always seems to be in the game. So from a Forest perspective, looking in it, he's that enforcer again, isn't he? I mentioned Ryan Yates. He's that same kind of player who perhaps sometimes is a little bit sort of undervalued. I'm not saying he's a great player by any stretch, but it just seems to have a massive impact on this fixture. So that's somebody I'll be kind of watching. But like I say, Phillips, and of course, the obvious threat is Grant at the moment in terms of goals.
Absolutely, some dangerous players on both sides, certainly. Well, as we near the end of the show, then I'm gonna put the pressure on you two and ask for starting with you, Des, for your predictions for tonight.
Looking at the fixtures, looking how things have gone, and I can't see beyond a draw. In all reality, a really low scoring draw. even a 0-0. If the game sort of don't start at 100 miles an hour, if it's a bit sort of, if both teams try and weigh each other up, I think ultimately they could cancel each other out and end up 0-0. But I think there's enough about both teams, and they'll give it a go. So I'm going to go for 1-1. I think I'd like Forest to score first and try and hold on. Because I think that if Forest do concede, there's always the potential of kind of caving in at a place like West Brom, especially if they concede early. But my head's saying we can go there and get a result. My heart's saying we can go and get a result. My head's saying a really low scoring draw, perhaps 1-1.
Absolutely. And what about you then, Matt?
Well, I admire Des's professionalism there, maintaining an unbiased viewpoint. And he's definitely right. If Forest can get through those first 10 minutes without conceding, then the pressure is going to be on Albion, given our lack of sort of efficiency in front of goal in previous games, and the crowd have definitely shown signs this season of growing frustrated, and that has an impact on the atmosphere at the Hawthorns. But I can't resist going with an Albion win. But I'm looking at it and thinking, well, where are the goals coming from? I really can't see it apart from Grant possibly. So I'm going to go with a 1-0, and we'll just about hang on. But I'm not as professional as Des.
Well, certainly both of you predicting it's going to be tight, whatever happens. Well, that's everything from us on the Under the Microscope West Brom vs Forest preview. But just before we go, thanks for joining us, Des. You can be found on the Do Daily YouTube channel. What can we expect from you there?
So basically what I do, it's a bit different from football. Whilst I talk about football a lot on other things, I use my YouTube channel to talk about like a light-hearted look at mental health. It's a personal vlog. It's how I'm feeling up and down. I encourage people to take part in activity and look at ways that we can do normal things every day. It's a little bit different. It's completely different from anything else I've ever seen out there. I'm not trying to be technical or scientific with things or put pressure on people. I just talk from my perspective about how the day's going, whether it's up, down. I'm quite honest. I get people to ask me questions, that kind of thing. Just being quite out there, it helps me as much as anybody. But I'd like to think if anybody's looking in, they think, oh, there's a normal guy doing normal things, and when he's not feeling great, he's trying different things to help. And that's all it is, really. I've been doing it a while now, but it's a tough subject to get people involved. So I'd encourage people to subscribe. It's a slow burner, but I appreciate that. I appreciate it's not easy. So if anybody would like to subscribe, please look it up.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, definitely our encouragement to head over to the Do Daily YouTube channel. And Matt, WBA report, do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Well, yeah, before I do, Ned, I'd like to encourage anyone, regardless of who you support, West Brom, Forest, to go and check Desi's channel out, because it's obviously a massively important subject and a message that we need to keep on raising awareness of. So before coming over to us, go and check Des out. But in regards to the WBA Report podcast, you can find us rambling on about all things Albion. We even talked about Lewis Grabban's beard in the most recent episode. I think it's been a bit of a struggle being an Albion fan these last couple of games. So we found ourselves talking about some light-hearted subjects. So you can check that out on Apple, on Google Podcasts, on Spotify. It'd be much appreciated.
Absolutely. Well, before we go, just a reminder, as well as heading to Do Daily and of course checking out the WBA report, to subscribe to Football League World TV on YouTube and give this episode a like, because it really will help us in the sort of YouTube algorithms and everything like that. That's not everything for Football League World TV this week at 4 p.m. We've got the weekend preview where you'll be in the safe hands of Alfie Burns and Marcus Ali. Matt, thanks very much for joining me. Des, thank you for joining me. And everyone, thank you very much for watching.